Melena Russell here with CNN News. We're sitting down with Baldwin Corporation in Shoker Hall to speak to Baldwin a little bit about their corporate level strategy, their core competencies, and how they did for the past 8 years in the simulation. Could one of you guys tell me a little bit about your business and what kind of strategy you were pursuing?
Yeah, with Baldwin Corporation, we were competing in the competitive sensor industry. We implemented a broad differentiation strategy by maintaining a presence in every segment of the market. We were able to gain a competitive advantage by distinguishing products with excellent design, high awareness, and easy accessibility. Baldwin was able to develop an R&D competency by introducing fresh and exciting products each year. Products were able to keep pace with the market by offering improved size and performance each year. Our capacity was continually expanded to handle the increased demand for our products, all while keeping prices above average. At the end of year 8, our cumulative profit was $375 million. Our stock price was approximately $288 per share, and our contribution margin was slightly over 58%. Our balanced scorecard scored in the 90th percentile across the nation. Our industry was competitive, but some markets proved to be far more competitive than others. The low-end market proved to be the most competitive market because other companies had introduced multiple products in the market, while Baldwin, we only had one. Yet Baldwin's one product still held a higher market share than any other single product selling in the segment. The least competitive market size, Baldwin held a 62% share of the market, with only 3 other competitors, none with even half the market share that Baldwin had. Overall, the competition was high, but Baldwin was able to maintain a 35% share of the total market.
Wow, it sounds like you guys really had a great strategy in place and you truly were industry leaders. Could one of you tell me a little bit more about your business level and corporate level strategies?
Yeah, our corporate level strategy was mainly growth, mainly internally by investing money in plant, property, and equipment. Heavy investments were made into human capital also by constantly recruiting new and better employees. Staffed employees received 80 hours of training per year. Investments were heavily made into TQM, which were able to decrease our costs in materials, labor, and administrative. Also, it decreased our R&D recycle time and increased our demand for products. We were able to compete in each of the markets while R&D kept up with our consumer needs. Marketing was used to seek out our customers. Once we had a market for our products, our production capacity was then increased in order to handle the capacity. This was financed through long-term debt and issuing stock. One of our major business level strategies was that we saw a major opportunity for growth in the size market during the early years. Many of the other businesses were dropping their products from that market due to the lack of profitability. However, we held strong and used the profit from our other segments, our other products, to support our size offering. Eventually, once we had invested enough in TQM in order to reduce our materials cost, the product became very profitable. So we then shifted our focus to increasing capacity tenfold and were able to keep up with the demand of the market this way. By year 8, we had achieved 62% of the market. Another strategy of ours was to acquire as much cash as possible, whether it was issuing long-term debt or issuing stock. We strived to achieve a great deal of financing each year to improve our cash flow. This financing allowed us to make improvements to our plant and equipment and automation, also to reduce labor and capacity so that we could meet consumer demand for our products. It also allowed for research and development on each product in each year so that our products always could meet consumer demands. The financing also assisted in TQM, sales, and marketing budgets. Cash is really what allowed our company to move to the top of our industry.
Seems like you guys spent a lot of time in the planning phase of this business. I was wondering how your functional level strategies supported the business and corporate level objectives that you just identified.
Sure, I could talk about that. Functional level strategies accomplish 2 critical objectives. They provide direction relating to maximizing efficiencies in a given functional area, and they clarify how a functional area supports business and corporate level objectives. In the finance section of the CAPSIM simulation, we were successfully able to balance our cash flow by issuing the maximum amount of stock each year. Although we took the max issue each year, we were able to continuously grow the company and increase shareholder value. We were able to balance our cost of capital by issuing enough long-term debt to pay for increasing capacity to meet the needs and demand in production. Our functional level strategy relied heavily on the accuracy of our financial forecasts, and these forecasts were generally accurate throughout the simulation. CAPSIM measures market cap, sales, and emergency loans in the financial section of the balanced scorecard. Although we achieved perfect scores in market cap and sales, an emergency loan was taken due to overestimating the demand in the first round. Some feel that there is actually no need to review financial measures as they are merely an outcome. Instead, they argue that if other measures of the balanced scorecard are all carefully watched, financial success will naturally follow. This may be true in some cases, but it is not always true. Our financial strategy relied heavily on the accuracy of the marketing and production forecasts as well. In marketing, we were able to successfully manage the 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. But the core competency was how Baldwin managed to grow in the market share each round of the simulation. Our strategy was to predict an increase in market share each round with an average of 2 to 5% growth, coupled with the given increase in the overall demand provided by the CAPSIM courier. Because our strategy relied heavily on increasing market share in each round, it was important to make big investments in the promotion and sales budget so that they could increase awareness and accessibility. It was also very important to decrease prices each round. This reflects the customer perspectives of the balanced scorecard, where CAPSIM measures the weighted average customer survey score and market share. We achieved a perfect score in both of these areas. The internal business perspective asks, what do we need to correct within our business to ensure that we deliver the value propositions the market needs and expects? Although it's important to be the low price leader in the marketplace, it also means that a business needs to drive down all internal costs of production and marketing. In order to achieve this, it was important to have labor and material costs low and a lot lower than the competitors. We were able to continuously invest in R&D and automation and align this with the goals from a financial perspective. CAPSIM measures operating profit on this section of the balanced scorecard, and we were able to achieve a perfect score in this section as well. While lowering costs from an internal business perspective, it was also important not to starve the learning and growth perspective of the balanced scorecard. The learning and growth perspective asks, how do we develop and grow in order to create value? CAPSIM measures sales per employee, assets per employee, and profits per employee, in which Baldwin was able to achieve a perfect score in all of these areas.
Sounds like Baldwin's strategy was clearly well planned out and executed. So I was wondering what your core competencies were during your 8 rounds of business.
Sure, I'll talk about that. So we had 4 or 5 main core competencies: R&D, production, HR and TQM, and finance. For R&D, we maintained up-to-date products with new, fresh, and exciting designs each year, all while keeping the product in the customer's ideal spot with respect to size, performance, age, price, and reliability. Keeping up with the customer's buying criteria made Baldwin the one-stop shop for all customers looking to buy sensors in any segment of the market. Customer focus rather than focus on competitors allowed Baldwin to increase market share incrementally during each year of the simulation. Our next competency was production. Each year, we purchased more capacity to handle Baldwin's increasing market share. Capacity was purchased in respect to the anticipated growth rate for the following year. This allowed us to make a sound business decision by purchasing enough capacity that would be effectively utilized. We understood that having too much capacity was not efficient and is also a poor use of monetary funds. The automation rating for each year was incrementally increased. The rating reduced the number of workers needed while increasing the number of machines needed to produce our product. Using less workers reduced our labor costs and ultimately was a cost-saving strategy. Our third competency was HR and TQM. Heavy investments were made in both HR and TQM in order to engage in cost-saving behaviors. Each year we invested 80 training hours per year in order to boost our productivity index and save more on employee costs. This increased the work ethic and quality of our current employees. In order to recruit and retain the highest quality employees, we set our recruiting spend at $5,000 per employee. For TQM, $1,500 was spent on each category for a total investment of $15,000 per round. For this investment, we've understood that benefits were cumulative, meaning that each round we invested more money in TQM impacts in areas such as material costs, labor costs, R&D cycle time, and admin costs would decrease, all while increasing demand for our product. Our final competency was finance. In order to finance all of our heavy investments in R&D, production, and HR, in the first few rounds, we often max out our long-term debt as well as our equity. This gave us the monetary funding necessary to take these investments without getting into financial trouble, i.e. emergency loans. With this cash, we were able to make maximum investments into the functional areas in which we later benefit from.
All right, guys, we talked about your strategy, how you implemented it, all your success, as well as your core competencies. I'm wondering now what kind of issues challenged your firm over the years, and what were these unique strategy implementation issues?
Sure, I'll touch on that. As Baldwin, we were a broad differentiator, meaning we wanted to maintain a presence in all segments of the industry and gaining competitive advantage by distinguish our products as market-leading design, accompanied by high consumer awareness and accessibility. While trying to implement our strategy, Baldwin initially needed large amounts of capital in order to maintain a high investment in R&D and to finance an aggressive marketing strategy. In order to gain the capital, Baldwin maxed out our debt and equity financing. This allowed us to have a large inflow of cash, which allowed us to invest in these core areas. Secondly, we also wanted to maintain a large presence in all the segments. In order to do so, we had to invest a lot of money in production and R&D. Unfortunately, for the first few years of business, 2 of our products were not profitable. In order to make our margins all profitable, we had to invest a lot in TQM and HR, which eventually lowered our labor and material costs. In order to do that again, Baldwin needed a large amount of capital. So again, we issued a large amount of equity and debt for every round for all 8 years of the simulation. The large amounts of cash on hand allowed us to use our cash to invest in TQM to lower our material costs as well as our labor costs. As stated earlier, Baldwin's functional strategy relied heavily on our accuracy of our forecasting, our sales forecasts, and our marketing department. With these accurate forecasts, Baldwin would be able to make better decisions in our production process. In order to avoid the possibility of stockouts on our products, we always produced more than what we estimated in our marketing strategy. This allowed for us to have our worst case scenario in our pro forma statements, but have the ability to produce over the estimated amount in our production. This caused Baldwin to successfully manage our cash better, as well as to minimize the stockouts that the company had each year.
That's great, guys. So I'm wondering now, what have you learned through the simulation, and what about business have you learned through this experience of running Baldwin Corporation?
I've learned that cash flow is very important. I think cash flow is one of the major reasons that our business was successful, and we had struggled with it in the early years until we understood that we had to max out our debt and our equity issue in order to have the cash on hand to be able to make the investments and do the things we wanted to do strategically. We realized that we need to have the cash flow available. So I think the cash flow is a major part of business.
That's great.
I think that after 8 years of being in business, I really saw how all the functional areas of the business come together, mainly the research and development part of the business. If we don't keep up with R&D, we could really fall behind and let our competitors gain some of the market share.
Also, after 8 years, I learned that you need to fail early in your career. Our first round, we were not profitable. That was due because we ineffectively managed our cash. As we learned later on in our simulations, that high cash was what allowed us to make our investments in TQM and HR, which eventually made our net margins a lot higher. So fail early on allowed us to realize from our mistakes and fix them as we went into further business.
Those are some great lessons learned. So I just wanted to thank you guys for being here. Thanks to Baldwin Corporation.
Thank you.